What's going on, everybody? This is the feed to Embiid. I am your host, Austin Krell, along with my co-host, Brock. Brock, you're going without a hat today, I see. And meanwhile,
Yeah. So listen, the first order of business is giving a shout out to my barber, Abby. You do the Lord's work, man. Check this out. Listen,
that is something.
He's doing the Lord's work. So I got to give a shout out to my man, Abby. I appreciate him hooking me up, but there's bigger fish to fry here, Austin. What do you got for me tonight?
Sixers win another weird game in Orlando. They had them at arm's length the entire game. Wizards sort of took like a brief lead in the third quarter, but the Sixers kept them at bay the entire game. They didn't blow them out like they should have done, but they kept them at bay. The big story, obviously, in the game, Ben goes down with what they're calling a knee injury. But that wasn't a knee injury. I mean, let's
I like the air quotes. I like the air quotes.
That was not a knee injury. You don't hobble like that with a knee injury. It's much more pronounced, and they say no swelling, no pain. And how is it a knee injury? If he's not in pain, if there's no swelling, how is it a knee injury then? So
I agree with that. I don't want to make any speculations, but I think that's a little bit of him nursing a back injury.
I think it is too. Or I think it's maybe some dehydration from the temperatures down there. Maybe he had the Charlie horse or a cramp, and say let's not push this. Let's set him out. Whatever. But I don't think it's a knee. I don't think it's that significant at all. Sixers again. We say it every single day. Dribble penetration, and dribble penetration some more. Today was no different. The Wizards stay in this game the entire night because of their ability to make shots around the basket. And, nothing has changed. And I mean, Brown says I think it was today's pregame media availability that he wants, that they're not gonna relent with the drop coverage and the pick and roll. They're gonna keep Embiid at the rim, but they might play up Horford to do like a soft trap a little bit, almost out of the pick and roll, which I didn't see too much of today. But they still keep getting blown by smaller guards, and that's the exact reason why that core philosophy and principle is why they can't blow teams out ever. Like all these other teams in the NBA, they blow the doors off teams from time to time, and you're wondering like why can't the Sixers do that? And then you realize that the defensive schemes, and then they have coaches who are willing to, they have coaches who are willing to adjust and aren't so prideful in their philosophies that they won't change. That's the whole reason why this team is frustrating for fans. The defensive principles never, ever change, and that's why you can never just have a relaxing win, why they can never just blow a team out, and you can just sit back and relax. Everything has to be a 7-8 point game against every inferior opponent. And, I wrote it in my recap. That's how Brett Brown wants to go down. So let it be.
Now, I remember Brett Brown saying a year or two ago that he likes these close games in an almost sadistic way because it prepares his team for the playoffs. Fast forward a year, it's the same defensive scheme. It's the same outcome to all of these games, and yet they haven't progressed any further than when Brett made this comment a year ago. So I don't understand his liking for these games. In Austin, Thomas Bryant scores 19 points with 1 3-point shot made. Jerome Robinson, 19 points, 2 3-point shots made. Troy Brown, 17 points, not a 3-point shot made. Ish Smith, 12 points, not a 3-point shot made. If you look at where the percentage of shots that these guys are taking and making most of them, it's in the mid-range and the paint area close to the rim. And why is that? The dribble penetration. Unfortunately, we have to talk about this every episode, but for anybody viewing, and you have to hear me say this every time, it's really a damn shame. If you watch Philadelphia defensively and they play this drop coverage against the screens, the defender on Philadelphia is always playing on the hip of or behind. And then in that case, you're relying on help defense. And oftentimes, if the help defense is not there, that's when these teams can generate easy looks and capitalize on them. So it's going to happen when you play Indiana, or it's going to happen when you play Washington. It's a defensive scheme that Brett Brown or whoever on the coaching staff refuses to examine. And I can understand it because it's like, sure, you want to take away that three-point shot. But at this point, is there really a difference if you hedge or go under screens? I mean, teams are torching Philadelphia in the pick and roll either way. So is there really a difference if you go under the screen and give up a few more threes? Because going over every single screen, I think it's been problematic not only this season, but for the previous 4.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's just like it's so funny that like literally what it boils down to for every single Sixers podcast. The reason that like we can never just have like a happy like, oh, we're content with this episode. It all every like the Rice Ricky Sanchez and every podcast it comes the basic missing piece of the formula is just a different defensive strategy out of the pick and roll. It's mind-boggling. John Russell chimes in. Was Ben exiting precautionary more than anything? I think so. I don't think there's a knee injury there. I think this team has been well known to embellish or mislead the fan base or the public about what kind of an injury is really at stake, either for better or for worse. He says #be happy. The fans cannot be happy because this team should not be winning games against the Wizards by 9 points. They shouldn't be beating the Spurs by a game-winning shot by, a second-year player. They shouldn't be losing to an undermanned Indiana Pacers team. They shouldn't be 41-27. This team is supposed to be better than this, if not on the offensive end. Certainly, their defense should make up for a lot of their shortcomings, and it doesn't. And the defense, as it turns out, is now the reason why they're very frustrating to watch, which is a pretty damn big, pretty big damning indictment of this team, considering it was all about the defense with them from the start of the season to now. So there is no being happy, and if you are happy, you're letting them out. You're conceding to them. You're showing mercy. Brock?
Yeah, well, had it not been for Joel Embiid's fourth quarter domination, 12 points, 4 of 7 from the field, Philadelphia might not win this game. And I agree with the philosophy that a win is a win, whether it be 20 points or 1 point. But at some point, you have to evaluate what you're watching, right? So you have the Indiana game. The Sixers barely beat San Antonio, and San Antonio was more undermanned than Indiana. And now you have a team that has the worst defensive rating in the NBA, minus 2 starters. Well, Davis Bertans doesn't start, but he plays starting minutes. And you barely beat this team. At some point, you have to evaluate what you're watching. Offensively, there is a severe lack of production. And thankfully to Joel Embiid and his post dominance, the Sixers can manufacture in the half court through that. But there is a severe lack of production on the offensive end. And whereas in the regular season, poor offense may have negatively affected the Sixers defense, an influx of 3-point shooting, long rebounds, getting back in transition. There's no excuse right now. It's a mystery, and I'm going to try to solve it. But for whatever reason that may be, Philadelphia's defense looks horrible. And this has been a 3-game span.
Scooby-Doo and the mystery of the bad defense. T. Scavia says predictions for the Sixers defending CJ or Dame and CJ in the PNR on Sunday. How could anyone predict this team ever? You simply can't predict the Sixers, and if you bet on them, you're asking to lose money. If you if you try to predict them, you're out of your mind. They cannot be predicted. This team, so they'll either have a masterful defensive performance and they'll win by 20, or they'll lose by 16 and give up 48 to Dame and 28 to CJ. Brock.
Yeah, they're going to get completely obliterated. And the total, the game total may not represent that because Philadelphia could ultimately win that game. I don't want to count them out, but Philadelphia is going to get obliterated in the pick and roll. And unfortunately, this Ben Simmons injury, there's a lack of clarification right now. I know the game ended, 45 minutes ago? So we really don't know what the diagnosis is. But if Ben Simmons doesn't play in this game against Portland, Jesus, I may not even tune in. You're going to get Gary Trent. You're going to get Dame. You're going to get CJ. You're going to get a couple roll men. You might even get Carmelo in the PNR. But defensively, Philadelphia is going to get obliterated by Portland.
What do you think the level of detail and discipline looks like when you have Melo setting a screen and then popping out like what do they even do there?
I don't know.
He's going to be popping threes. You're going to have Dame going to the rim. It's going to be ridiculous.
Before the NBA bubble, I equated Tobias Harris to a poor man's Carmelo Anthony, a prime Carmelo Anthony. And now I think Carmelo Anthony is a poor man's Tobias Harris. But nonetheless, he's been doing all right since this restart. And I don't see why he can't get his easy buckets against Philadelphia either.
Yes, I agree. Now let's go over to Joel Embiid in the post. Joel has 29 points tonight. He has, I think it was 17 or 18 in the second half. And, for the third consecutive game, Joel looks really, really, really dialed in. And a lot of it, I think, has to do with, the usage and the amount of, of responsibility he's being given in this offense. But it has had the positive effect of he's now begun to read double teams way, way, way better than what we're used to. And, it actually, it's making the offense sort of fit better together. Like today, there were a couple times when, he swings to the weak side and Tobias gets it. And then he, it's a hard closeout. And then Tobias beats his guy off the line and gets to the rim. You can see sort of like these breakthroughs of moments where they're like, okay, this offense is kind of coming together. Kind of makes sense. So much of that is now being sparked out of Embiid identifying the double team. And, to be honest, it's really quite a shame that they don't have like a sniper anymore. Because if they had a sniper and they were identified and he was reading the double teams as well, it would be over. It would be over. You would have they would be firing on all cylinders. But the sniper that they did have just wanted to secure the bag for 2 years before dipping. Apparently, he said, and pardon my take today.
Yeah, that he said he knew a week before, right? A week before free agency that he was going to sign with NOP.
Yeah, he's a bullshitter.
Yeah, so, there's good things with this game that you can still look at. Of course, you alluded to Joel Embiid. He was responsible for 40% of the team's field goals made, almost 40% of their points scored, and his usage was around 33%, which is right on par for the course. Unfortunately, NBA Stats does not update statistics in the post until a couple of hours after the game, so I can't really tell you how many times Joel Embiid posted up, but assuming it was more than 15 times, Philadelphia would have improved to 6-0, provided he posted up 15 times. Philadelphia is 6-0 in those games when he does post up 15 or more times. So there is a direct correlation between Joel Embiid establishing himself in the post and Philadelphia winning. I saw a lot of deep passes in the post, which I liked. And again, last game, 4 assists, 0 turnovers from the post. So I'm curious to see how many times he either assisted or turned the ball over. But I did notice a couple of those long weak side passes. One thing I also noticed about Joel Embiid, I don't know if this is something that he worked on over the break, but Joel Embiid seems like he's taking a second or two after he catches the basketball in the post to kind of realign and position himself before he goes to attack. And that's something I really liked because contrary to some games during the regular season, Joe kind of gets the ball right away, puts it at the lowest point possible, and then that leads to turnovers.
Which is the worst thing you can do.
Especially at his size.
Is bring it low. He should keep it up high every single time above his head. Just face up with one hand. Yeah. Face up with one hand, and then just read, go to work, jab step, do your thing. There's no reason for him to bring it below his knees.
I completely agree. So what I've seen in the previous couple of games is that Joe does bring the ball low, but now he's giving himself a second or two to kind of turn around and get set and positioned, and then he can attack. And Joe has looked awesome. I honestly think this is one of the better shapes he's ever played in. I mean, his conditioning looks great. He's running back and forth really well. Defensively, he looks really spry. I couldn't tell you how many times I saw Joel Embiid jumping around and falling on the floor today, which, although it makes you kind of bite your nails a little bit, it's a good sign because he's active and he's moving around. Offensively, there's nothing to complain about with Joe. I believe he took 2 shots from beyond the arc. Yeah, it was only 2. It was 2 misses from the top of the key. And other than that, everything came from within the perimeter. His production is high on the left side of the court. That's the side he likes to work on. A lot of good shots in the paint, only a couple of misses, and 2 shots at the free throw line. So Joel Embiid offensively looked awesome. And Austin, it's not a great game from Ben Simmons, and he exited early. But I did see that, and to your point, you tweeted it, it seemed like Ben Simmons did have more responsibility handling the basketball. And I think with Shake Milton, he kind of slows the game down. He walks the ball up the court. He passes half court. He hangs out for a second or two. Ben Simmons is just like this. He shoots out of a cannon, whether it be on an inbound pass or a live rebound. So I was glad to see he get more, responsibility offensively. And he, too, even ran some pick and roll with Shake Milton. It was pretty frequent in the first quarter.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of Ben Simmons, yes, he. I mean, I don't know whether it was a pride thing or he was reading what we all say about him on Twitter, but not we. I wouldn't dare associate myself with a Sixers fan. I'm just a neutral observer.
you and me both.
But I thought that Ben looked far more engaged tonight on both sides of the ball. He was actively searching for his shot, looking for contact, although he wasn't hitting all of his free throws, but looking for contact and not shying away, getting to the rim pretty much at will, better footwork around the basket. And I also thought that even though he wasn't racking up steals and blocking shots and just smothering guys, I thought he made guys uncomfortable. And they weren't able to get by him. He was sort of fronting them off with a strong core and then pushing them back out to the perimeter. That they weren't able to get up shots comfortably over him, and as a result, he made a lot of guys miss. I was, if I'm a fan, I'm really happy with what I saw from him defensively, even though it wasn't like the 3-steal and 8-second game against Indiana, in the early in the season, but I think that drove itself, that inspired play came from his having the ball in his hand more. And it wasn't like he had the ball in his hand more necessarily in the half court, even though he did. It was more on the lines of understanding we have to balance our offense in 2 different ways. When it's half court, we got to run it through the pick and roll and let Shake do it a little bit. If Ben has it in his hands, or if we're going to look for Ben, let's get him a deep catch below the rim so he can just dunk it. That kind of thing. And then in transition, it's Ben Simmons' ball. Everybody just catch up. And I think with that kind of game plan, it really unlocked his engagement. It got him going, and he was more effective on both sides of the ball as a result.
Yeah, to your point, I agree, and I like that Ben Simmons took 8 free throws. He only made 4 of them, but if you can get up to 10-plus free throws from 2 players on your team, that production is unparalleled. One thing I'd like for Ben Simmons to add, and I saw a couple of people talking about this on Twitter recently, is maybe a move in the half court with the basketball, a crossover, some sort of hesitation, something to get defenders moving, and then he can take them to the basket and take maybe an open lane to the basket as opposed to just throwing shots up. One thing I've observed with Ben Simmons is that he's really good at getting to the basket. But sometimes when he gets there, if he has a defender draped on him or he has a short little window to put a shot up, he throws up garbage. And that's not all the time, but some of his shots are just like real head scratchers, even some shots that go in sometimes. It's like, we sure that ball went in? I don't know how the hell that went in. So for Ben, I think maybe adding a move dribbling in the half court, that can diversify his game. But I do like the aggressiveness early. And Austin, we got to talk about Shake Milton. I mean, seriously, we have to talk about the kid. 4 of 7, 3 of 5 shooting. That production's awesome for Philadelphia. What I like most, though, is 4 assists and 0 turnovers. So as
Bingo.
a primary or secondary playmaker, that's exactly what you want. Initiating some offense, being a guy when if things break down, the teammates can look to you to score. And at the same time, he bounced back phenomenally. I believe in the past 2 games, he either has 0 turnovers in both combined or less than 2. So Shake Milton doing a really good job protecting the basketball.
For sure. I completely agree. Speaking of Shake, and I know that we've had a lot of, in a sense, impressive feats by Shake this year and a lot of, inspiring checkpoints that he's reached. I don't think anything is as inspiring about his season as after as bad as he was in the Indiana game and the way that that he and Embiid butted heads, and as taken out of the game as he was, he responds with the game winner against San Antonio and 16 points in that game as well. He hits a buzzer beater in the first quarter, and he puts in I think it was like 13 points in his game with 3 threes, and a couple of them came in the fourth quarter too. So Shake, I thought, is just getting better and better, and then he had it, and then as bad as his defense has been at times, and as I guess skinny as he's looked at times, he kept Ish Smith in front of him in that last minute on a drive and blocked the look at the rim. So that was a huge moment for him defensively as well. And Shake continues to show signs of a really strong mentality, and that's going to help him so much going forward. That's a significant part of the battle.
Yeah, defensively, teams are trying to attack Shake Milton, so I think the fouls are definitely happening because of that, and that's something I'd like to see Shake maybe scale back. That could be something he needs to work on, maybe controlling his body or not gambling as much. So the fouls I would like to see decrease, but nonetheless, for a guard that has as little experience in the league as he does to get attacked as frequently as he does, he's most definitely holding his own. But Austin, I wanted to pivot here because Brett Brown, prior to the game, I think said he was going to limit the Sixers to a 9-man rotation now, and that could be because a couple of players are hurt. But the 9-man rotation today worked. No Howell Neto. But I'm curious now, Austin, we've seen a lot of inconsistency from Furkan Korkmaz. Matisse Thybulle defensively is all over the floor, but on offense, he's not contributing much. I want to know what happens when Glenn Robinson is healthy, because I think he's a player that can really benefit this team. But he now makes the rotation a 10-man rotation. So if Brett Brown has to scale rotation back even further for the playoffs, assuming Glenn Robinson absorbs minutes, who loses minutes, do you think?
I think it's become a much easier conversation because of how much Furkan's defense has seemingly regressed these past 3 games.
Yeah, today was tough.
And his shooting has been horrible too. I think Furkan might lose some minutes there. I think. I don't think Horford. I think Horford looked pretty good again to
Yeah,
he only had 2 points, but they were a good 2 points. But no, he was he was better defensively. He was continues to look a little bit younger when he's on the move. And I think it was just about. He sort of bought into this role of, I'm here to do whatever it takes to help this team win games on a night-to-night basis. And tonight that wasn't about scoring for him. It wasn't. So, I think it's going to be Korkmaz, if anybody.
Okay. I feel like I agree. But some of those lineups, like a Josh Richardson, Glenn Robinson, Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid,
it could be Josh. It could be Josh because defensively he's looked weak, and then there was one possession where he he broke like a double team around like the corner area, I think, and he goes to attack the rim and dribbles low to keep the hands away, turns it over, and like no one even touched him. So like he's not a point guard even if they try to make him a backup. He's not a backup point guard. His shooting is kind of inconsistent at times, and when he has time to set up, he makes them. Yeah. But he's not a barn burner with with the shooting, and generally his offensive consistency is lacked this year. So it wouldn't shock me if maybe he suffers a little bit his playing time. Maybe even Thibault, if you could possibly play him any less.
Yeah.
But I think it would be a candidate: Josh, Thibault, and Furkan.
Okay. And you talked about Al Horford. I think Horford's done a really good job filling his role on the Sixers unit, whether that be on the second or third unit or playing with the first in this restart. I mean, 30 minutes today is likely because there were some injuries. But nonetheless, he led the team in assists in this game, and he grabbed 10 rebounds. So when you look back towards the Toronto series and maybe even Brooklyn, if Philadelphia has a capable backup center, those series may end a little differently. Al Horford stepping in, although he didn't produce much offensively, grabbing those rebounds, facilitating the rock, setting screens at the elbow, defensively rotating between assignments. I think Al Horford has done a really nice job, and he's limited his three-point shooting. He's not chucking up three-point shots as often, and when he sees the open shot, he's taking them. So I applaud Al Horford for kind of stepping into his role here.
I completely agree. Now, speaking of, you're right. So Alec Burks got all of Neto's minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and I think even though Brett kind of favors Neto, I think sort of Brett keeps track of what the public is thinking about as well, and that kind of plays maybe a small demon in his head. But I have no problem never seeing Raul Neto ever again. Alec Burks, I thought, actually kind of looked better as a passer today. He wasn't just shooting. He was like, I'm going to pass fake first, actually, or I'm going to try to make a read and pass to a teammate, which was a bizarre concept to Alec Burks from prior to that. But he has a very sort of lanky, fluid way about his offensive game, and he, in the pick and roll as a creator off the bench, he could be a huge asset to this team if they just let him get minutes.
Yeah, I completely agree. In his time with Golden State, even prior to that, in his stints with Utah, Alec Burks has always done one thing exceptionally well, and that's attack. He's really good at attacking, and he's also a good passer. He's got poise when he dribbles the basketball. In watching some of his film in Golden State, he facilitates well for a player of his size and his reputation. You'd assume someone 6'6" that's just chasing buckets is not making these team first passes or is not creating space to make that pass. But Burks does a good job. And the thing I like about him is he has both playoff experience and in the half court, he does things with the basketball that are different from what everybody else on the Sixers does. He includes ball fakes. He has hesitations. He rotates his shoulders well. His footwork is good with the basketball. So he's a deceptive player, and I think he can add a lot. And I don't think he's missed a shot since the bubble has started for Philadelphia from beyond the arc. I think he's 5 of 5 from beyond the arc. So he's letting it fly from distance. And Tobias Harris, he was 5 of 10 on catch and shoot tries, so 50%. That's good. That number's, of course, going to decrease because he went 1 of 5 from deep today. But Tobias Harris becoming a catch and shooter is also something I like. I saw Tobias run some DHO and pick and roll with Al Horford today. So 2-man game more than I did in the previous 2 games. So I was pretty content with that. But again, against the worst defensive team in the NBA, according to defensive rating, shorthanded, you'd like to see a little bit more from everybody. But at the end of the day, you just got to feed the ball to Embiid. And that's why the name of this podcast is Feed to Embiid, because you give him the ball and he's going to feast. It's as simple as that.
We eat in the night. I'm really pleasantly surprised by the way that Alec Burks has really bought into this off-ball role. Like, I thought he was going to struggle to make shots out of just a spot-up guy because he's used to having the ball in his hands. He is lighting it up from deep, and he's also moving off of the basketball pretty well. His movement, off ball is pretty good, and he's not really showing a sign of this like I can only be used in a certain way. He can be used on ball and off ball, I think, which opens up an entire new dynamic that this team hasn't had in the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, he's had a pretty similar usage throughout his entire career. It's around 19 and 22%. So the usage isn't what's different. It's just the touches and where he's catching and getting the basketball. So if he's not the point of attack or the primary creator in the half court, he has to be positioned somewhere that makes sense. And for him, that may be in the corner or that may be the wing. But I think he's done a really good job being dynamic in understanding in this possession, I have to stay in the corner, and this shot is coming to me, and I'm not moving from the corner. I'm taking this three-point shot. And other possessions, he understands if things aren't working with other players on the floor, if the offense is collapsing, he needs to catch the ball on the wing and create. And I think understanding that is really important for a player like Alec Burks. And if he can play like this every game, there's really no use for Howell Neto. So regardless of what Howell Neto does for giving Joel Embiid the ball, I would take Alec Burks' offensive production over that any single game.
Yeah, no, I agree. Tiago Scavia says, "You guys rock. Keep up the awesome work." Thank you, Tiago. We try.
Yeah, you rock too, Tiago.
You rock too, Tiago.
Now, Austin, let me steal the thunder real quick here. I saw this on Twitter the other day. Whoever posted it, it was a start bench cut, and this one got me thinking. Right?
Oh boy,
it's Ben Simmons, Devin Booker, and Jason Tatum. Now, I was talking to my friends and I said, this is going to hurt. If I had to choose right now, it would be Ben Simmons. Honestly, it would be Ben Simmons.
Okay.
And we had this discussion before Devin Booker's 35-point outburst and the game winner. If I'm looking at the next 10 years, though, I think I'm taking Devin Booker. Honestly, I think I'm taking Devin Booker. And I say that because I think his offense is rare. You know, he kind of emulates Kobe Bryant's game. And for a shooting guard on a team like Phoenix, it could look like empty statistics because Phoenix never wins. But I usually never hold that against players, not against Bradley Beal, not against Devin Booker.
Not against maybe, I don't know, Zach LaVine.
Zach LaVine, too. He's one. Well, and another development to watch is actually what's going on with Buddy Hield in Sacramento. I don't see how Buddy Hield is a king after this season. I mean, I think he didn't close the game. He with all of the drama not starting in Sacramento and coming off the bench, in the bubble, when every game is Buddy Hield doesn't finish the game in the closing lineup over a player that went 0 of 12 through 4 quarters. Buddy Hield didn't see the floor in the closing lineup. So that's something to monitor. You got me off track here. But I'm taking Devin Booker over the next 10 years. And offensively, I think his game is really rare. It's a smooth game. It's a grown man's game. He can get a bucket anywhere on the floor. If he's checking into the game, you know that guy's attacking. You know he's going to get you a bucket. I think he's going to be better offensively than Jason Tatum over this next decade. But I think defensively, Tatum has more to show for, at least through their first couple of seasons. So I don't know what Devin Booker may look like on a team surrounded by players that complement him, winning players. But my answer today would be to start Ben Simmons and to bench Jason Tatum. Cut Devin Booker. Over a 10-year frame, though, I think I'm starting Devin Booker. I'm benching Ben Simmons, and it pains me to say this, but I'm cutting Jason Tatum because I love all three of them. But I just think it's a really unique and a fun debate to have because they're all under 25. I mean, they're young as hell. So you really don't know what they're going to blossom into. Same with Giannis. Like Giannis has the potential to be better than Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and I'm okay with saying that on record. I think his game in the half court is better probably.
You know we're live, right?
Yeah, we are. We are. So I think Giannis possesses the potential to be something different and something better than anything we've seen before. He's a modern rendition of Wilt Chamberlain, maybe. So I think that's where I stand on all these guys under 25 years old.
It's something, all right. I think Jason Tatum is like a Fugazi Paul George. I think he has more inefficient games. I mean, he hunts his shot so aggressively and like the dribble bullshit that he does, where he like pulls back, sidesteps, and then like, you know, it takes a three and it like pops off the back of the rim, like you know, he misses a lot of shots. Tatum. A lot of shots. I think he's a benefit of high usage in Boston. And I think his dribble is improved. His handle's improved. I think his defense is improved. And he's always been a pretty good he's always been a pretty fluid and capable finisher. But for me, he just isn't like I don't trust his shooting. And while Booker, I think, is not as good of a shooter, I think it's more of a function of the pieces on his team not being able to be trusted that much. And so that plays a role, obviously. But I also think that, like, Booker has that killer in him. Booker is that guy who I want taking the shots down the stretch for my team.
Mm-hmm.
And Tatum isn't that guy. And on top of that, Ben Simmons is the best all-around player of the three of them.
Right.
So I think right now I'm taking Ben Simmons.
Of course.
I'm benching Booker, and I'm cutting Tatum.
Interesting. Okay.
In 10 years from now, well, do you mean like 10 years from now, like active players, or like reflecting on the past?
So from this point, 10 years later, the player is in the league for 10 years, and it ends on August 5th, 2030.
Siri, make a reminder for that day. I would still go. I think I'm gonna still go Ben, Booker, Tatum.
Okay.
I just think that Tatum gets so overhyped. I really do. I just think, like, last night I saw him come up very short. I mean, he played like 6.5 minutes in the fourth quarter against Miami.
Yep.
Had no points, and he had like 2 turnovers down the stretch. And so, like, whereas, like, and Tatum has good spacing on his team. He has Kemba, he has Gordon Hayward, he has Jaylen Brown. Booker, not so much. Ben Simmons, not so much. But yet, Tatum, to me, isn't as efficient as the other two are at times. And I think the ceiling for the other two is higher than it is for Jason Tatum.
All right, that's fair. And what I saw from Tatum this season, it was definitely improved defense. He looks way more active, and he can become one of those point-of-attack defenders where he can play multi-positional. But offensively, in the fourth quarter, he was among one of the most productive players in the league. It was his quarter in this season. He did really well there. Shooting splits were awesome, better than Tobias and Chris Middleton there. A lot of fourth-quarter point production. But there is a point to be made that he got this huge influx of touches. His usage shoots up, and Boston plays a game that caters towards Jason Tatum. So I really think it's going to be fun to see how all three progress throughout the next 10 years. But right now I'm on record as saying I'm going Ben and Book. Or no, I said Ben and Tatum right now. And then over the next 10, I'd take Book and Ben.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Of those three, who is most likely to be with their current team in the next 10 years? Tough one, isn't it?
Honestly, here's my thing, right? We're moving forward from a game where players took pride in that thing where they played for their city for their entire career. And Tom Brady leaving New England to go play for Tampa Bay just kind of broke me. It's like if that dude did it, I don't know what the hell anybody's going to do. So I'm comfortable saying that Jason, I don't know. I want to say Ben. I want to say Ben, but I really don't know. It's tough. It's tough. Let me go Booker.
There's I think Booker's the least likely to be moved.
Sorry.
Let me rephrase that. I think he's the most likely to be moved.
Most likely.
I think it's Tatum is the least likely because I think they sorry, Jason's messaging on the side, messing me up. But I think Boston wants to extend Tatum like as soon as possible because they believe in him as a superstar. And I think Clutch is going to have a pretty big, say or influence in what Ben Simmons does. And and he says, I'm curious to see how that, how it plays out in the next 4 or 5 years. And so, I think that's a factor in it. I also think that, there's a flight risk in that the Sixers might look to move Ben Simmons if it doesn't work out. I think those two things, and that isn't to say like I think that Ben's gonna, is gonna want out or request a move. I just think that the forces taking Ben away from Philly are greater than the forces taking Jason Tatum away from Boston.
That I agree with. The reason I said Book, man, is like I think they're creating a culture in Arizona. I mean, with the Cardinals and the Phoenix Suns and the weather there, I think there's a youth movement and a new culture being established in Arizona. And I think Phoenix has fully given the keys of their organization to Devin Booker. The reason they bring in Monty Williams is to change the entire culture there in Phoenix. But then again, it is a small market team right now. So there's always the threat of guys going to play for Los Angeles or the big market teams. But I think right now Devin Booker would probably be the least, not the least, the most untouchable. Would he? I don't even know if that's true. I don't know. I don't even know if that's true, honestly.
Wait, did you just call Devin Booker the most untouchable?
Yeah, and that's why I don't even know if that's true. I really don't.
That's a whole different conversation. Now I don't even know. I think Ben Simmons is probably the most touchable. That sounds weird to say, but I think he's the most touchable. Then I would. It's tough. I guess I would say.
I think it's easy. It's probably easy to say Ben Simmons is the most likely to be moved, and that's because there's another superstar on the team, and Joel Embiid. So you assume if it eventually doesn't work out, one of the two is going to have to get traded. You'd assume. Whereas in Boston or Phoenix, there's 13 other players they'd trade before they even thought about trading Booker or Tatum.
Right. My only thing is, like, let's say they don't extend Tatum this offseason and then he has a decline.
Mm-hmm.
Does Boston look to move him before they have to max him?
I mean, they moved on from Kyrie Irving prematurely. Right? That turned out to be the best thing for their chemistry, I guess. But yeah, they did move on from Kyrie prematurely.
They moved from Isaiah Thomas too, although they kind of had reason for that, I guess. But
yeah,
it's certainly an interesting situation. MH Money _ says bold take. I think this was in reaction to your saying that Giannis is going to be better than Kareem. I believe is what you said. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Dominique Brown says when Ben and Al Horford play together, this team's defense and rebounding is outstanding. Huge mistake benching Horford. I don't know if that's meant like in favor of Embiid. If it is, I don't know what you're watching because Embiid's far and away a better defensive player than Al Horford is. I think what's most disappointing about this team right now, as like an effort standpoint, is that they give up a lot of offensive rebounds to smaller players right now. Like today, Wizards are sneaking in there grabbing offensive boards. The Spurs were doing it a lot on Monday. Pacers did it a ton on Saturday. They're not boxing out right now. And it's such a rudimentary part of the game. I don't know how you don't box out, but they don't complete defensive possessions. And the championship contenders, the best teams in the league, they don't forget about the details. They don't forget about the basics. They finish defensive possessions. They box out. They get defensive rebounds. They rotate well. They fire on all cylinders. They cover all the bases. That's the difference. And the second chance opportunities kill the Sixers, and they lead to tip outs and open threes. And that's just by cutting that off, you can change the way that this team plays so much. Especially because off of a missed shot, you have live ball transition. Defense is trying to get back. You're trying to push the ball. If you let them get second chance points and they score, that's a chance at the window. It's gone. But interesting point there. Jay Blevins 46 says, what are their career win-loss records? I think that's meaning to Booker, Tatum, and Simmons. I would think Tatum probably has the best win-loss record, followed by Ben, followed by followed by Booker.
Book, yeah.
Yeah. Jay Blevins 46 also says Tatum, in response to the who is, I guess, least likely to be with the same team or the most likely to be with the same team 10 years from now.
Yep.
And Jason is our insider, if you will. So we have to defer to him on that one. He has voices in his head telling him stuff. So we'll see about that.
So do
I. Jay Blevins 46 also says, I think he means Booker's here, but Flucker is 100% the first one to want to move to another team. I agree. I think him and Levine, especially, and even Buddy Hield, are getting tired of losing and tired of wasting their young careers getting smoked and not making the playoffs. I mean, none of those three teams have been in the playoffs in how many years? It's
more than I can recall.
I think I was a sophomore the last time the Bulls were in the playoffs, and
that would have been what?
That would have been like 2016, 2017.
12?
And then
16. Oh, that's right. They did.
Yeah, they lost to the Celtics in the first round after going up 2-0 in that series. That was like the Wade. That was the Wade, Butler, and Rondo year.
Yeah.
And then I think the Suns, it hasn't been since like 2010. And then for the Kings, I think it's been like 2004.
Mm-hmm. It's been a long damn time, and I DeMarcus Cousins is my favorite basketball player, so I've been watching Sacramento lose for a lot of years, and that organization just needs a complete restart, and it's going to have to start with their head coach right now. They need to change at that position first.
Would you rather have Rep Brown or Luke Walton?
Shit, man. I'd rather have neither. I'd rather have your dad coach the Sixers.
No, not an option. You don't want my dad.
I don't know. Like, I don't know if Brett Brown's definitely bad, but I don't know if it's just that I've had to watch him pace back and forth on the sideline and storm on the court and give these wacky ass post-game interviews for 7 years, and that's why I hate him so much. But honestly, I'd probably take him over Luke Walton.
Wow. I thought Luke was going to be a great head coach, and it just backfired on me.
It hasn't worked on two different organizations yet.
Now, granted, the Lakers, I think, gave up on him too early because LeBron wanted him out. But that's neither here nor there. Let's go back to the Sixers. The Sixers podcast, after all. Right. Matisse Thybulle, I'm starting to figure out why I think he's not getting as much playing time. And I think it has to do with the fact that he's becoming tentative, or that's not the right word, tentative, if you will. When he overplays a coverage, ends up behind the guy. I think he becomes tentative with how he defends because he's afraid of picking up fouls. Mm-hmm. And so it's like he's overly aggressive, cheating the passing lane, trying to get the deflection, ends up behind his guy, and then he's also like kind of backing away and basically not defending at all. And it's giving up wide open lanes to the basket. So I think Matisse has to grow more disciplined with the way he defends, not try to cheat, not be overly aggressive, and just stay in front of a guy. I think he's long enough and athletic enough where he can elevate and deflect guys, right, and staying in front of them. He can tip passes. He can block shots, on guys. So I don't think he has to do that bullshit where he tries to cheat passing lanes and get behind guys and do the rear view deflections. It's a cute thing, but veterans pick up on that and they take advantage of it, and then you get into foul trouble, and then you're not getting consistent playing time. And so I think that's a big part of why he's not getting minutes right now.
Yeah, and I think offensively, kind of like how Shake Milton needs a big in the game to be most effective, like a Joel Embiid or maybe an Al Horford. I think Matisse Thybulle needs the right pairing of the right pairing of players to be effective. And he usually needs to be with a player like Ben Simmons that can run in transition, or maybe somebody that's not going to create this logjam in the paint. But offensively, he's been less than serviceable. He hasn't hit shots that he needs to hit, and he can't really create off the dribble at the moment in his career. So offensively, he's not giving you anything. And if your defense is already as bad as it looks through these first three games, then Matisse Thybulle's not going to elevate you any further.
Damn. It's a pretty big indictment.
But he was on Jimmy Kimmel, though. That's something I can't say I've ever done. So
this is true. He was on Jimmy Kimmel.
not yet. Not yet.
Oh, that is for you. For you. Yeah.
Who knows?
Tell us about your haircut.
Listen. Let me stop. Let me stop. I gotta stop.
So, what did you think of Jerome Robinson today?
I thought, who the hell is this guy, and why is he scoring against the Sixers? That's what I thought. No, Jerome's been good in the bubble. I mean, on this Washington team, somebody's going to have to put the ball in the basket. They're down a couple of starters, and Jerome Robinson has been the guy to step up and do so. He's been good from range for him, and they can put him in the pick and roll and run a two-man game nicely with Thomas Bryant. So Jerome Robinson was a cheap little find for them, and he's complimenting the team well, as is Thomas Bryant. Thomas Bryant had a good game too. I think Thomas is going to develop into a nice little role player.
A cheap little find. He was a 12th overall pick last summer.
For
two summers
not,
ago.
not for Washington, though. Not for Washington. No.
Clippers.
Yeah, and then he was involved in the 3 team, right?
He wasn't getting any playing time though at all. So the fact that they scalped him basically from the Clippers, and then he's got a future. He's a good player. He kind of reminds me of CJ a little bit.
I mean, in the way they create offense, yes, but that might be a little disrespectful to CJ.
Yeah. What did you think that they did with Rui Hachimura tonight? Because they really limited him. I didn't think he was nearly as effective as he had been in the DC game earlier in the season, where he had like 18 or 20 something points. Mm-hmm. And I thought that they just did a better job of just knowing their personnel and accounting for him than those elementary things in the game, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Hachimura is good. He's good offensively and defensively. He scores in a similar way to like a Paul Pierce or even a Devin Booker. And of course, I just said disrespectful to CJ. That's disrespectful to both because of how young Hachimura is. But nonetheless, he gets good buckets, and I think it was definitely a product of limited limited floor spacing. You know, Washington didn't really have anybody to shoot the 3 ball today, and because of that, his game probably suffered. And Philadelphia kept throwing big bodies at him, so I think that definitely hindered his game. But he's going to be good for a little while. He's a good ball player.
Yeah, no, for sure. Now, Embiid. By the way, these officials have been horrible.
Oh my God,
horrible, just unbelievable. And my dad was like, are these like inexperienced officials? Like, what's happening here? I was like, well, I don't think they want any of the high-risk older officials coming into the bubble and getting sick, so they naturally go with the younger, maybe more inexperienced ones. But these refs have been abhorrent in the bubble. Mm-hmm. And Embiid picks up his 5th foul with like 6:55 remaining in the game. Brett Brown deploys a lineup of Horford, Harris, Burks, Korkmaz, and Milton. And it was kind of like the only Embiid-less lineup that I've ever seen where I was like, I kind of like this lineup. It's kind of not horrible. Now they only they got outscored in those minutes without Embiid in the game with that lineup 5-3. So not great, not a great 2 minutes 36 seconds. But I kind of thought it was like something that I'd like to see going forward because it gave Harris an opportunity to sort of get more. Engaged offensively because the offense is running through him. It got another shot creator on the court in Burks. It got Korkmaz and Milton, 2 good, two capable spot up shooters. And then you have Horford anchoring your defense. Now, obviously, your defense is not going to be great with Burks, Korkmaz, Milton, and Harris in there. In fact, it sounds like it's a quite horrible 4-man group. But I mean, you're not looking for extensive minutes without Embiid. You're looking to just keep pace with the other team scoring.
And when that 5 was on the floor, I mean, they positioned Harris and Horford on the elbows. I think every single time when
they ran horns, they were running horn sets. Yeah.
So that's something that you can expect from that 5, and I think it works well with that 5. You can maybe curl and get a kick to the corner and get a shot there. A lot of the times what they do with Harris operating from the elbow, if it's a mismatch, is send 4 on the right side and kind of isolate Harris in the post there and just let him work. So I think when you see Harris and Horford in the game as the 4 and 5, you can expect them running that Horford line a lot.
Going back to that, I also thought that they did a good job of re-emphasizing, placing an emphasis on the bully ball concepts on offense and getting deep catches, forcing the opposition to foul down low, or if not, it's like a little misdirection and then you just lob backdoor and then these guys are finishing it. And Harris had a couple of those against the Spurs. Ben had a couple of those today. And I think that that's sort of a big foundation for them in how they want to run their half-court offense. Now, obviously, with Ben out, if he's out for an extended period of time, we'll see how that looks. But it is actually good to hear Brett Brown say something in a press conference and have it actually applied in game.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, look, at least we don't have to listen to Brett praise Thomas Bryant after this game and say, look, Thomas Bryant had a great game. We just couldn't stop him. There was no answer. Philadelphia gets this win here, and it was never a doubt, man. Never a doubt. What did I say? I forget what I predicted at the start of the bubble. I want to say, did I say 6-1? No, that doesn't even add up to 8. What did I say? I either said 7-1 or 6-2.
I think you said 6-2 or 5-3.
So listen, 6-2. We're par for the course right now.
I mean, but we'll see. They have a big game against the Magic on Friday. Magic now without Jonathan Isaac. Sixers could be without Ben Simmons, though. What does that matchup look like to you?
I'm speechless. No. Orlando has produced one of the best offensive ratings in the NBA since the restart, and I think that's because offensively they space the floor well. They do run the two-man game. They have a good second unit. They're shooters on the floor, so I think it's a game where Orlando is going to try to get Philadelphia running. But neither team, contrary to the previous couple of games, neither team can really go small on the floor. Orlando plays 2 to 3 true centers, and Philadelphia usually likes to keep Joe or Al out there. So neither team is really going to go small. So it may look different than the previous 3 games.
Yeah, and I think it's gonna. Obviously, Isaac being out, unfortunately, helps the Sixers a lot. Mm-hmm. But I also think that not having Ben is obviously going to play a role. That game to me feels like a loss. It just feels like
the Orlando game.
Yeah,
is that a Markelle Fultz revenge game loss, or is that just a loss?
No, I don't think Brett would ever. I can't put anything past Brett, but I don't think Brett would let them stoop so low as to get the comeuppance of Markelle Fultz. But I just think that that's like a game where Orlando is very switchy. They're athletic. They can shoot it. They love pick and rolls. They have, capable perimeter bigs. It doesn't bode well for the Sixers, and I think it's going to be a loss. So they'll drop them to 2-2. They'll go and finish the bubble at 4-4, and we'll all be in the exact same spot where we all started, where we're just like, what the fuck is this team?
The Sixers purgatory of mediocrity.
Exactly
they take one on national TV against the Bucks, and then they have the highest odds to win the finals the next day, and then they bounce back with a loss at Orlando by like 30 points. It's just
they lost that. They lost that one by like 15, I think. Or there was a game they lost in Orlando by 15, and there's one they lost in Orlando by 1. I forget.
Yes. See, here's the problem. I just used that analogy as a complete joke, and it was historically accurate because it happens every month.
It's sad. It's very sad. Now, Brock, do you have anything you want to shout out for us before we call it a night?
I need you to check out the Painted Lines YouTube channel. I'm going to work on a piece soon about Allen Iverson and what his role would be or what his impact would be in the NBA, in the modern day NBA. So we're going to be working on that. Make sure to check out the Painted Lines YouTube channel, Brock Landis YouTube channel, Landis Brock on Twitter, and of course, my man Austin. You're always grinding, so everybody keep checking out, keep liking, keep retweeting my man Austin's work.
For sure. You can follow me on Twitter, KrellTPL. covering the Sixers always. I'm actually working on a shot by shot video breakdown of the TJ Warren game. So be on the lookout for that if you
All right.
if you dare. I'm Austin Krell TPL on Twitter. He's Brock Landis Brock on Twitter. As always, be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts at the Feed to Embiid. Leave a 5-star review and a rating. Or leave a rating and a 5-star rating and a review. There we go. And subscribe to us on YouTube at the Painted Lines on YouTube. As always, thank you for tuning in, everybody, and interacting with us. Take care and have a good night. We'll see you. Brock, are we recording Friday night or Sunday?
Let's go Sunday.
Sunday? All right.
Sunday seems like the day.
We'll be back Sunday. Take care, everybody. Have a good night.